Hello goons and gals, it is Doug here with the Born to Goon channel, and I'd like to welcome you to today's video where we will discuss, assess, and rant about the all-new Suzuki VSTROM 800. And while my thumbnail and subsequent words in this video may come off at times as being very harsh and unfair towards Suzuki, I want you to understand that they come from a place of love. You will learn much later on in this video, if you choose to stick around for that long, about my long history with Suzuki motorcycles, which I hope at the time will shed some light on my current frustration, so please try to reserve judgment until the end. Now also towards the end of this video, I'm going to ask for a very big favor from you guys, the YouTube audience, because I have a proposition for you that I know you're going to like, and I promise you there's no other moto vlogger here on the YouTube that's going to do anything like this, so be sure to stick around. So in this video, we're going to talk about the all-new Suzuki VSTROM 800 first, who this bike is for, what it's suited for, and how it slots against the current ADV competition out there, followed by my offer to you, the YouTube audience. So how about we get started? While most of the adventure motorcycle hype at this year's Eicma show was all centered around the new Honda Transalp 750, when it was all said and done, one could make a valid argument now that Big Red was upstaged by the underdog Suzuki VSTROM 800. And you can see my recent Transalp video up here in the corner or down in the description box where I talk about how Honda may have underwhelmed us with the all-new Transalp 750. While the Honda and the Suzuki rival each other in the power output department, there is no doubt that Suzuki has done their homework, and they seem to have pulled out all the stops by equipping the VSTROM with a lot of standard features that either are not available on the Honda Transalp or come as an upgrade that will end up costing you more money. The Suzuki VSTROM packs a feature-rich punch that includes things like a removable subframe, a larger fuel tank, a skid plate, a quick shifter, an adjustable windscreen, and even a GPS mounting bar that the Honda does not have. Also, the VSTROM might end up being a better motorcycle for off-road use than the Transalp, because with the VSTROM you have more front and rear suspension travel, more ground clearance, and a fully adjustable suspension system. These are obviously not the only differences between the two motorcycles, but it is a highlight of how Suzuki has thrown in a lot of premium features and technology on the new VSTROM, and I think this caught the motorcycling community off guard a bit, and it's increasing the stock value of the Suzuki VSTROM. There are a few drawbacks, however, with the Suzuki, and one of those is the weight. At 507 pounds wet, that's a hefty bike right there, and that's about 50 pounds more or 22.5 kilos heavier than the Transalp. In fact, that's about the weight of an Africa Twin. As to how much of that weight can be shaved off in the aftermarket, I don't know, but that's a porker of a bike. It would have been nice to have an 18-inch rear to complement the 21-inch front, but the 17-inch rear highlights Suzuki's intention that this is more of a road-focused motorcycle than a complete off-road weapon. You can disengage the rear ABS on the VSTROM, but you can't completely disengage the front. It would have been nice to have that feature added to the motorcycle. And last, we see yet another adventure bike with a ride-by-wire throttle and an extensive electronic suite without cruise control. I mean, what is up with these manufacturers holding cruise control hostage? Cruise control on adventure bikes now has become like toilet paper in a pandemic. Every manufacturer is either not offering it or they're forcing it upon you as an upgrade. I mean, the technology is already there on the bike. How hard is it to put the cruise control on a bike that is supposed to be tour-oriented? I don't get this, guys. I don't get it. But anyway, it is what it is. How about now we take a look at the competition? Now I'm going to guess with the Suzuki VSTROM that the pricing is going to slide in between the VSTROM 650 and 1050 models. So my guesstimation is roughly 11 to 12,000 United States dollars. So what's out there in the 11 to 12,000 range, 7 to 800 cc's with a 21-inch front wired wheel? Well, a few that come to mind are the Yamaha Tenere 700, the new Transalp 750, and the Aprilia Touareg 660. Depending on what your intended use is of your bike, there could be other competitors, but we're going to revisit that topic a little bit later. So how does it stack up against those bikes? I've already done the comparison between the V-Strom and the Honda, so let's start with the Tenere 700. The T7 is easily 50 pounds lighter, but it's absent of any electronics, so that could be a selling point for you. The Suzuki also produces more horsepower, and the suspension travel is more than the T7, but somehow I'm not expecting in the near future we're going to see any Instagram posts of a VSTROM 800 doing this. The Aprilia Touareg is very close to the V-Strom in power, but the Touareg is lighter by 50 pounds, has cruise control as a standard feature, and unlike the Transalp, the Tenere 700, and the V-Strom, the Touareg is the only one in this group that has tubeless tires. And that's a significant benefit for an adventure motorcycle that might see some off-road work. Obviously, the comparison I did above is just a general overview. I'm not going to discuss all the specifications of the Suzuki V-Strom against its competitors. I think it's better to save that for the time when we can compare these bikes back to back to back. But I wanted to highlight a few important features that could sway a rider's decision from one brand to the other, plus distinguish that the Suzuki V-Strom 800 is probably a 75-35 on-off-road motorcycle at best. And that, to me, is disappointing. Now, before we go smashing the dislike button and trolling the Goon, just hear me out for a second. Plus, you have to stick around to the end so you can hear my offer to you. Anyway, the general consensus I get here is many riders, not just myself, were let down at this year's Eicma show with the Transalp 750 and the VSTROM 800. Because I think the majority of adventure bike riders out there were looking for that budget-friendly, lightweight, aggressive off-road motorcycle that rivals the Tenere 700. While we can make the argument that the Transalp 750 and the VSTROM 800 were not meant to be that type of a bike, and their intention is to appeal to a larger audience because most adventure riders will never take their bikes off-road into sticky situations, there are, however, a lot of riders that will. And that's why the T7 is so popular, because it can go there if you wanted to. It can withstand the aggressiveness if you wanted to. And actually, I think the bike likes it. And if I could be sharp with my tongue for a moment, in my opinion, if you're looking for a good touring motorcycle that's going to spend about 90% of its life on a freeway, and you're occasionally going to hit up the fire road or the gravel road or truck trail, there's tons of other motorcycles we can choose from. I mean, I think I could easily make the argument, do you necessarily need a 21-inch front tire to ride on a gravel road? You can just put a more aggressive front tire on your 17-inch or 19-inch tire and go have at it. Sure, the 21-inch front would be better, but if you're going to spend 80 to 90% of your time on the road, why make the sacrifice? Now, if you're going to do some more aggressive trails or it just naturally makes you feel more confident and comfortable as a rider, then do it. But I guess for me, I get a bit annoyed when these manufacturers claim that these bikes are off-road worthy and all they're doing is slapping on a 21-inch wired front wheel to a big porky touring bike. On that note, it's probably good that I move off of that topic and talk about something more controversial, such as the styling of the VSTROM 800. Well, in theory, performance should always outweigh looks, but these bikes nowadays are not cheap. And since most motorcycles today are built very well and perform well, looks are more important now than they ever have been, because a lot of riders are going to end up financing this bike. And long after the newness wears off of owning it, you're going to still be making payments for that bike. And the least you can do is look at it and say, damn, that looks nice. Now, I've always said that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And in my opinion, here is a picture of the Tenere 700. It looks like it's a new bike. Here is a picture of the Transalp 750. It looks like a new bike. And here is the Touareg 660. Looks like an exotic, futuristic new bike. And then we have the V-Strom, which looks like the 1989 DR800 rally bike. In fact, the V-Strom has changed very little since its introduction of this body style in 2014. Now, I personally am not surprised because that's Suzuki. They can milk a design just as long as Kawasaki, because the last time they changed their DRZ line was when NSYNC had a #1 hit on the music charts. Again, I know beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and some people are really going to be attracted to the styling, and personally, I kind of think the gray paint job is cute, but if all of these motorcycles are sitting on the dealership showroom floor at the same time, at the same price, when it comes to it, are you really going to pull the trigger on the Suzuki? Let's just be honest. I understand that building a motorcycle is very hard. But here's a half-baked 10-minute paint shop version of a few design tweaks I did to the current VSTROM 800. And here is motorcycle concept designer Aubert Danbezi's version. I mean, come on, Suzuki. Could you not have just kind of freshened it up a little bit? I know that about right now, so many of you are probably a bit irritated with my criticism towards Suzuki. However, I apologize for my emotions, but to me, it's personal and it bothers me. And here's why, because it probably isn't the same way for everybody. I was once part of Suzuki's rider program in America. I started out racing RM80s as a kid. I moved to RM100s, then RM125s, and on to RM250s. When I switched to motorcycle road racing in 1998, I stayed with Suzuki on a GSXR 600 Strad model. Over the next 15 years, I raced 5 different GSXR 600s, a 750, and 2 1000s. While everyone in the mid-2000s were switching to Hondas and Yamahas because they were better, I stayed with Suzuki. And when they cut back on their rider support, I still remained a Suzuki rider because I love Suzukis. Gixxers were always good to me. And while I wasn't a sponsored factory rider, without Suzuki's contingency program, I would have never been able to stay in racing as long as I did. A lot of my greatest memories as a motorcycle rider came when I was riding a Suzuki. And that's what I associate the brand with. Then when I hear that the Gixxer 1000 will no longer be available in Japan and Europe, that makes me shed a tear like I'm the crying Indian trash man. Now that I'm older and my racing days have passed me and I'm just riding mostly dual sport and some adventure, if Suzuki would make a legit up-to-date bike, I would be the first one in line to buy it. And in my opinion, I think Suzuki could have made the Tenere before Yamaha did. When the motorcycling world was desperate for a stylish, aggressive, rally-inspired middleweight adventure bike, Suzuki could have stole that market share and reignited the brand. They had the engine, they had the chassis, they had the technology, but they didn't. Now they show up late in the game with this thing. You see where I'm coming from? While my words may be harsh and sometimes unfair, it's only because I love Suzukis. And honestly, I've been looking for an excuse to get back on a Suzuki for over 10 years now, and I think here's my chance. So now comes the idea and proposition I have for you, the YouTube audience, and I'm gonna need your help. I have an idea to just go ahead and buy this VSTROM 800. I'll do a few stock tests on it for the moto community, and then when I'm done with those, I'm gonna take a grinder to this sucker and I'm gonna see how much weight I can cut off of it. I'm gonna beef up the suspension, I'm gonna add some cool rubber, maybe an exhaust, redo some of the plastics, and I'm going to build the bike that I think Suzuki should have. And I'm going to try to do this as cheaply as possible. As I mentioned, because I'm riding dual sport mostly, I'm not in the market for an adventure bike. I haven't ridden my Triumph Tiger in 6 months, so I don't need another adventure bike. But I feel compelled to build a worthy Suzuki, the bike that Suzuki should have built, but it has to be worth it. So if you, the YouTube viewer, wants to see this project, I want you to type in the comments section hashtag VSTROMINATION. I want you to take this video and I want you to send it to your friends, have it to send to their friends, and send it to their friends, send it to your mother, your parents, your next door neighbor, and everyone you come in contact. I want you to get the momentum going for this project. Then when the bike is complete, because I don't need an adventure bike, I'll probably give it away to a subscriber, or we will raffle it off for charity or something like that. So if the interest is high enough for this project, I will do the work. In closing, I know that the Suzuki VSTROM 800 is a great bike. I trust Suzuki's, I trust their reliability, and I am sorry for being so critical, but you understand, I love Suzuki's, and I've been looking for an excuse to own a Suzuki, but nothing they have made over the last decade or so has just reached out and grabbed me, and I'm wanting that, and I am begging that, and sometimes when you're in love, well, that makes you emotional. Anyway, guys, let me know what your opinion is. Don't forget, hashtag VSTROMINATION. Let's do this. Let's make the Tenere killer on our own. As always, whatever I said in today's video is just my opinion only, and I could be wrong.